terror attack was foiled in Gush Etzion, thankfully, before anyone was injured. According to Mahmoud Abbas, Biden's visit to the PA accomplished absolutely nothing for the Palestinians. Another Iranian missile engineer strangely went missing just a day after an Israeli spy network was allegedly caught by Iran. Iran also removed 27 cameras from the nuclear site, threatening not to turn them back on until the 2015 nuclear deal is restored. The home of the terrorist that killed the security guard at the entrance to Ariel back in April was finally destroyed by the IDF. I'm Justin, and this is the Israel Guys. Welcome to the Israel Guys, where we cut through the fog of fake news to bring you the accurate headlines from Israel. Guys, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to hit that subscribe button and maybe drop us a like and write us a comment. Tell us what you think in the comments below about the show and about what's going on in Israel right now. It really helps us out, anything that you do. Guys, time is running out to sign up for our volunteer trips here in Israel. You do not want to miss this life-changing opportunity to volunteer with us here in Israel. Our first trip starts just over a month from now, so don't miss the opportunity to sign up. Guys, when you come with us, you will get your fingers dirty in Israel's soil, meet the local people, make a lasting impact through volunteering, fulfill 3,000-year-old biblical prophecy, and also go off the beaten track. We'll take you to places where most tour groups that come to Israel do not go. So make sure to go to serveisrael.com or click the link in the description below to sign up for one of our volunteer trips. Guys, a terrorist attack was thankfully foiled in Gush Etzion just on Monday evening. An Arab terrorist was arrested Monday evening in the Migdal Oz settlement, which is in Gush Etzion, after he planned to carry out an attack against IDF forces. The terrorist, he threw a Molotov cocktail near the settlement. He set a fire and then hid in the bushes with a gun and an improvised explosive device. I think he was planning to carry out an attack when forces came to put out the fire. Kind of a crafty thought here. But Channel 12 News reported that when the forces arrived at the scene of the fire, they thankfully identified a suspicious person hiding in the bushes, and they were able to arrest him, seize his gun, and his improvised explosive device. Thank God, no harm was done. The IDF is on top of it. They're on their toes, and they're not going to let terrorism happen on their watch if they can help it. So, according to Mahmoud Abbas, Biden's visit to the PA was a big zero for the Palestinians. Lebanese newspaper quoted PA Chairman Mahmoud Abbas as saying that he was surprised that he was unable to obtain from Biden a single sentence that could be presented as progress in the political process with Israel. Now, this might come as a surprise to some of you guys because it seemed like Biden and Mahmoud Abbas were on good terms when they met in Bethlehem just 2 weeks ago. And Biden, he did make some promises. He said he was committed to the two-state solution, which any reasonable person knows that is a stupid idea, a two-state solution. But Biden said he's remaining committed to the two-state solution. He said back on July 15th when they met, he said, quote, "Two states along the 1967 lines where mutually agreed to swaps remain the best way to achieve equal measures of security, prosperity, freedom, and democracy for the Palestinians as well as Israelis." Bonk. Wrong. Sorry. You're wrong, Joe Biden. That is not the best way to have equal measures of security and prosperity. That will not work. But this statement by Joe Biden, I guess that wasn't enough for Mahmoud Abbas. Because according to sources, Abbas told the Egyptian president, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, and Jordan's King Abdullah that he was unhappy with the results of his meeting with Biden. Apparently, Sisi and Abdullah tried to calm him down by noting that major regional issues imposed themselves on the U.S. president's agenda after the start of the Russia-Ukraine war, which is very true. But Abbas's reported dissatisfaction with the Biden administration's policy, it also came as senior Palestinian officials stepped up their attacks on Israel. Recently, there have been several terrorist attacks on Israel, and actually leaders of the Palestinian Authority, the PLO, and the Fatah have been inciting violence against Israelis. Mahmoud Abbas, deputy chairman of the ruling Fatah faction, said, quote, "It has become clear that the other side, Israel, understands only the language of resistance." So he and other officials have expressed disappointment over the Abbas-Biden talks, arguing that the U.S. president did not address core and sensitive issues. So also on Monday, the PA Prime Minister, Mohammed Shtayyeh, called on the international community to put pressure on Israel to stop its, quote, military incursions into Palestinian cities, towns, and refugee camps in the West Bank. You know what the military incursions are that he is talking about? I'll tell you right now. There have been several IDF counterterror activities recently that the IDF has conducted, going into Palestinian towns to arrest terrorists or terrorist suspects. But I think the most prominent one that the PA president is talking about here probably is when the IDF went into Nablus to arrest terrorists who had conducted recent terror attacks in Israel. The terrorists barricaded themselves inside of a house, and then they opened fire on the IDF, and there was a gunfight. During this gunfight, 2 armed Palestinians were killed, and most of the international headlines, news headlines, are just saying 2 Palestinians killed by IDF forces in raid or something like that. They're not telling the whole story, obviously, like they always do. But then after the fight was over, the IDF found tons of weapons, firearms, and explosive devices. Also on Monday, the PA Foreign Affairs Ministry accused Israel of deliberately sabotaging the two-state solution. That's pretty funny. I mean, that'd be great if they were doing that, because we all know the two-state solution is a horrible idea. And the only one who thinks that it will work is Joe Biden. Well, I'm sure there's other people. But the ministry also accused Israel of waging war on the Palestinians through its violations and crimes, as well as continued construction in the West Bank settlements. I'm confused. Okay, so what is building in communities? What does Jewish people building in their own communities have to do with violations and crimes? It's no crimes for them to build on Jewish state land. Like, inform me here. Also, the Palestinians are building hundreds and thousands of illegal homes every single year, not only on their own land in Area B, A, and B, according to the Oslo Accords, but also in Area C, which is Jewish state-owned land, and the Palestinians are getting away with it. But Israelis building on their own, in their own communities, is violations and crimes, according to the PA Foreign Affairs Ministry. Anyways, MK Betzalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir, they might be running together in the next elections. They're conducting negotiations right now. They have yet to reach an agreement on a joint run for the 25th Knesset. It's actually, the elections are only 98 days away. So this week, the Otzma Yehudit party submitted an outline for the top 10 of a united list. As part of the outline, 4 places will be allocated to Itamar Ben-Gvir's party, and 4 places allotted to the Smotrich party, and 2 places will be allocated to Avi Maoz, who is the chairman of the Noam party, and Yosef Brodny, who is the chairman of the Jewish Home party. For quite a while now, I think like 2 weeks or something, Netanyahu has been pressuring them to run together, because if these 2 parties split, one or both may not pass the electoral threshold, which would cost the right-wing bloc a significant number of seats. Last Tuesday, Betzalel Smotrich said, quote, "We are, with God's help, running together. This partnership has proved itself. We will manage it in a closed room responsibly. There's one thing that interests us, the responsibility to the state of Israel and to the right." And then he said something. He said, "Woe unto us if we wake up to a government of Prime Minister Yair Lapid in the joint Arab list. Yes, woe unto them if that happens. That will be a horrible day for Israel if that happens." Moving on, another Iranian missile engineer strangely went missing. And when I say this, you probably know what I'm talking about. When I say strangely went missing, it's most likely Israel who assassinated him, who did a preemptive strike here before Iran basically gets nuclear power and causes a big threat to Israel, not only Israel, but to the United States. So there have been several social media posts going around for the last few days that Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps engineer Saeed Thamarder Motlaq was killed. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Nasser Kanani said, quote, "Cowardly assassination of heroes of our scientific prowess didn't help behind the curtain terrorists to achieve their goals." And then he said, "Peaceful nuclear industry of Iran owes its flourishing to Reza Ahmadinejad, who is another Iranian scientist who was taken out like 10 years ago, and his fellows." He continued, "Their blood and scientific accomplishments will be safeguarded." Oh, so don't worry, guys. Iran's nuclear industry is peaceful, according to him. Peaceful nuclear industry. Don't worry. We can definitely believe them when they say this. Anyways, according to Israeli media, posters in memory of the scientists were published primarily in pages affiliated with Iran's opposition. Some reports called him a martyr or shahid, and some said he had even been assassinated, likely by external elements. Some reports even claimed Iranian authorities had warned the scientist's parents not to publicize his death. So the interesting thing about all this is that at the same time, or actually the day before, Iran, they claimed that they caught an Israeli spy network that were laying explosives at a very sensitive site in the Isfahan province. Media sources stated that they were all arrested while in the process of concealing explosives at the target location. Iran's media is so full of propaganda and stuff at times that it's hard to know what is actually true and what's not. So, yeah, it's really hard to tell what's going on here exactly. But on Saturday, Iranian state media first announced the arrest. They said, quote, "Members of a network who are in contact with the Mossad succeeded in entering the country via Kurdistan, using operational tools and advanced communications equipment and armed with powerful explosives. They intended to carry out destructive activities and commit unprecedented acts of terrorism at various critical sites and operations that were planned in advance." I don't think they would have been committing acts of terrorism necessarily, but they could have been the ones who planned the assassination of this Iranian scientist. The official Iranian Public Relations Department added that, quote, "Investigations are ongoing and our intelligence organizations are continuing to monitor any links they had with internal and external elements guiding them in their terrorist operations." As I said before, the man apparently entered Iran via the Kurdistan region of Iraq after undergoing months-long training in preparation for conducting attacks against sensitive targets in the Iranian region of Isfahan in central Iran. As you guys know, Iran occasionally announces the detention of people it says are spying for foreign countries like the US and Israel, but it never provides enough evidence to back up these claims, so it's really hard to tell what is actually true and what's not. But along the same lines of Iran just removed 27 cameras from one of their nuclear sites, and they threatened not to turn them back on until the 2015 nuclear deal is restored. According to Reuters, Iran announced on Monday that it will refuse to turn on 27 International Atomic Energy Agency cameras until the 2015 nuclear deal is restored. According to Iran's Tasnim news agency, the chief of the country's atomic energy organization made the pronouncement, with Tehran informing the IAEA that it had taken down 27 cameras put up under the 2015 nuclear deal with the West. The Iranian Nuclear Agency's head, Mohammad Eslami, said, quote, "We will not turn on the IAEA cameras until the other side returns to the nuclear deal." Nasser Kanani accused IAEA chief Rafael Grossi of, quote, "unprofessional, unfair, and unconstructive views on Iran's nuclear program" during his weekly press conference, but said Iran would return to the nuclear deal if the U.S. showed goodwill and if a good and a sustainable deal is reached. So they're basically making the terms to the United States here, and they're going all out to try to get the United States to return to this deal. I'm very doubtful, but let's continue to hope and pray that the United States will actually show a strong face here to Iran and not return to this disastrous deal. and maybe they even need to cooperate with Israel on a strike or something. The home of the terrorist that killed the security guard in April at the entrance to Ariel was finally destroyed by the IDF. As you guys probably remember, back in April, 2 terrorists snuck up to the guard post at the entrance to Ariel and opened fire on the guard posted there with his fiancée. Vyacheslav Golev, who was the guard, he was killed while standing in front of his fiancée, trying to save her life. He shielded her with his body. The terrorists were later caught, and an indictment was brought against them by the military court. The demolition of the home, it was repeatedly postponed for a while due to, yep, you guessed it, the visit of none other than U.S. President Joe Biden, due to fears that the demolition of homes in a sensitive political period would lead to increased tensions between Jerusalem and Washington, which is the last thing that Israel wants at this time. But finally, the IDF destroyed the home Monday night, and we'll play the video here. And for those of you who are saying, isn't this too harsh to punish the family of the terrorist? Well, let me tell you, this is justice. This guy actually murdered an innocent Israeli. And actually, the Arab culture actually respects strength. If after a terrorist attack, if Israel did nothing, absolutely nothing, the Arabs would see that as weakness and would actually encourage them to commit more violence and more terrorist attacks. But whereas if Israel responds with strength and actually destroys the terrorists' homes, which is usually their policy, then the Arabs respect that, and hopefully it will deter more Arabs from committing terrorist attacks. But yeah, continue to pray for Israel, guys, that no more terrorism will happen and that Israel will respond with strength, not only to the Arabs in the region, but also to Iran, that the U.S. will respond with strength to Iran, and that Iran will not dictate these terms, that the United States will stand up in strength here. Guys, if you enjoyed today's show, be sure to subscribe here on YouTube, or if you're just listening on your favorite podcast platform, make sure to leave us a comment, write us a review, and come back every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for more news from Israel. As Christians, our mission is to stand unconditionally with the land and people of Israel. I'm Justin Hilton, and this is the Israel Guys.